The unexpected encounter. Layla Patel wiped her soil-stained hands on her apron and surveyed the empty flower shop with a weary sigh. The going out of business sign hung crookedly in the window, a painful reminder of the past 6 months since Vanessa Harrison, her former business partner and supposed friend, had abandoned their venture to launch her own luxury botanical brand with Layla's designs and supplier contacts. "You need to go, Lay," insisted Priya, her sister, waving the embossed invitation that had arrived that morning. "Vanessa's hosting this ridiculous Botanical Empire launch gala tonight, and you deserve to show your face." "To what end?" Layla removed her apron, revealing the simple cotton dress beneath. "To watch everyone fawn over how she transformed the floral industry with my designs?" Priya crossed her arms. "No, to remind yourself and everyone else that you're still standing, that you haven't wilted." Hours later, Layla found herself standing at the entrance of the Sovereign Hotel's grand ballroom, dressed in a midnight blue gown she'd purchased years ago for a wedding she never attended. The delicate floral embroidery along its hem was her own addition. Tiny forget-me-nots and thorned roses, a personal signature that now felt ironically appropriate. The room glittered with crystal chandeliers and arrangements of imported flowers that Layla recognized immediately: orchids from her former Taiwanese supplier, roses from the Ecuadorian farm she'd personally visited. Each centerpiece contained her trademark asymmetrical design, though slightly modified to avoid obvious plagiarism. "Layla, you actually came!" Vanessa's voice carried across the room, honeyed with false warmth. She approached in a designer gown, champagne flute dangling between manicured fingers. "How brave of you." "Congratulations on your success," Layla replied evenly, proud of how her voice didn't waver. "The arrangements are beautiful. Thank you." "I've been so blessed with creative vision," Vanessa smiled, gesturing to the surrounding executives and investors. "You know, sometimes partnerships just don't work out when one person lacks ambition." The sting of these words was interrupted when Layla accidentally stepped backward, colliding with someone behind her. Her champagne splashed across the sleeve of a man's charcoal gray suit. "I'm so sorry," she gasped, mortified, reaching for a napkin. "Please, don't worry." His voice was quiet but carried a gentle authority. "It's just fabric." Layla looked up to meet calm hazel eyes. The man was tall, with angular features softened by a slight smile. His suit was well-tailored but understated among the ostentatious wealth around them. No flashy watch, no designer labels, just a simple silver pin on his lapel shaped like a tree. "Julian Hawthorne," he introduced himself, taking the napkin but making no effort to dab at the stain. "And you are?" Before Layla could answer, Vanessa swooped in. "Julian, I didn't know you were attending. Have you met our investors yet?" She shot Layla a dismissive glance. "This is just my former partner. She's closing her little shop, actually." "Layla Patel," she managed to say, extending her hand despite Vanessa's interruption. Julian took it, his grip firm but gentle. "The florist who created the seasonal sanctuary installation at Children's Hospital last winter?" Layla blinked in surprise. "You know about that?" It was extraordinary work. "The children still talk about it." There was something in his gaze, recognition perhaps, that made Layla feel suddenly visible again. Vanessa's smile tightened. "Julian, the chairman was hoping to speak with you about your foundation's involvement." "Perhaps later," Julian replied politely, his attention remaining on Layla. "I'd like to hear more about your approach to therapeutic botanical installations, Ms. Patel." As Vanessa reluctantly departed, Julian guided Layla toward a quieter corner of the ballroom. "You seem uncomfortable here," he observed. "Is it that obvious?" Layla laughed softly. "Let's just say I'm facing the consequences of trusting the wrong person with my passion." Julian nodded thoughtfully. "Yet you came anyway. That requires significant courage." "Or foolishness," she countered. "I find there's often little difference between the two." His smile reached his eyes this time. Sometimes the bravest acts look like madness until they're understood in retrospect. Throughout the evening, Layla discovered Julian was surprisingly easy to talk with. He listened intently as she described her small shop. asked thoughtful questions about her design philosophy, and shared his own interest in sustainable agriculture. Not once did he mention his own work beyond vague references to community projects. What Layla didn't know, what nobody bothered to tell her, was that Julian Hawthorne was the reclusive founder of Terra Renewal Foundation, which controlled billions in agricultural and environmental investments, or that he was considering backing Vanessa's company until he'd overheard her taking credit for Layla's distinctive designs. As the gala wound down, Julian handed Layla his card. "I have a project that might interest you," he said simply. "Something small but meaningful. Would your shop be available for consultation despite its current status?" Looking down at the simple card with just a name and number, Layla felt something she hadn't experienced in months. A tiny, fragile seed of hope. "We're not quite closed yet," she replied with a genuine smile. "I think I could make time for a consultation." Blooming curiosity, the brass bell above petal and stem jingled weakly as Julian pushed open the door 3 days after the gala. The shop was small but charming, with exposed brick walls and reclaimed wood shelving. Despite the closing sale signs, Layla had arranged the remaining inventory with careful attention, clustered by color and texture rather than traditional categories, creating a visual journey through the space. She emerged from the back room carrying a bucket of fresh carnations, her hair tied back in a practical knot, dressed in jeans and a paint-splattered green blouse. Recognition flashed across her face. "Mr. Hawthorne," she said, setting down the flowers. "I wasn't expecting you so soon." "Julian, please." He glanced around appreciatively. "Your space tells a different story than your arrangements at the gala." Layla raised an eyebrow. "How so?" "Those were technically perfect but constrained. This," he gestured to a particularly striking arrangement of wildflowers and dried grasses. "This breathes. It has character." A hint of color rose in her cheeks. Vanessa preferred the formal designs for client work. "These are more personal." Julian moved through the shop slowly, examining each arrangement with genuine interest. "You mentioned your closing. May I ask why?" "The practical answer? Money." Layla began trimming the carnation stems with practiced efficiency. "When Vanessa left, she took our major corporate accounts and exclusive supplier relationships. I've been operating at a loss for months. And the impractical answer?" Her hands stilled. "Perhaps I lost faith in what I was building." Julian nodded as though this made perfect sense. "About this project I mentioned, it's for a community garden rehabilitation in Westbrook. The neighborhood association wants to create a sensory garden for elderly residents and children. Something therapeutic but sustainable." Layla's eyes lit up despite herself. "That's actually my specialty. Before the shop, I designed healing gardens for rehabilitation centers." "I know," Julian said quietly. "I visited your installation at Riverside Recovery Center last year." She looked at him curiously. "You never mentioned that." "I prefer to observe quietly." He smiled slightly. "Would you be interested in creating a proposal? Budget isn't a concern. The focus is impact." "I'd need to visit the site," she said, already mentally sketching possibilities. "I can take you this afternoon, if you're available." Something about his earnest expression made Layla set aside her usual caution. "Give me 15 minutes to finish this order." The community garden turned out to be a neglected half-acre behind a senior living complex, bordered by an elementary school playground. As they walked the overgrown space, Layla came alive, pointing out natural sight lines, existing mature trees worth preserving, and areas perfect for sensory stations. "We could create raised beds here for residents with mobility issues," she explained, kneeling to examine the soil quality. "And this corner gets perfect morning light for a butterfly garden. The children would love that." Julian watched her, fascinated by the transformation. The hesitant woman from the gala had vanished, replaced by someone confident and visionary. "You see it already, don't you? The finished space." "I always do," Layla admitted. "It's both a gift and a curse in my profession. The vision comes easily. It's bringing others along that proves challenging." "Not this time," Julian assured her. "You have complete creative freedom." Over the following weeks, Julian found increasingly frequent reasons to visit Petal and Stem. He ordered custom arrangements for business, Associates requested consultations on plant selection for his apartment and even convinced Layla to teach him basic floral design during quiet afternoon hours. What Layla didn't know was that after each visit, Julian would make discreet calls to botanical suppliers reestablishing her accounts at preferential rates, to his foundation arranging anonymous grants for small business revitalization, to a prominent home and garden magazine editor suggesting a feature on innovative floral artistry. One rainy Tuesday, Julian arrived to find Layla staring perplexed at a large delivery of rare orchids and premium roses. "There must be some mistake," she was telling the delivery person. "I didn't order these. The supplier said it's a standing order restoration," the young man explained. "Something about account reinstatement?" Julian pretended to be absorbed in examining a potted fern, while Layla sorted through the confusion. Later, when she mentioned the mysterious delivery, he simply suggested, perhaps they realized losing your business was their mistake. Similar incidents followed. A renowned wedding planner discovered her shop and commissioned centerpieces for a high-profile event. A local restaurant chain requested weekly arrangements. Her website traffic inexplicably doubled, bringing new customers. "I don't understand what's happening," Layla told him one evening as they finished work on the community garden plans. They sat on the floor of her shop, surrounded by design sketches and plant catalogs, sharing takeout Thai food. "A month ago, I was drafting a bankruptcy filing. Now I'm hiring part-time help," Julian shrugged. "Good work eventually finds recognition. After 5 years of struggle, it seems suspicious that recognition arrives immediately after I meet you." Her eyes narrowed slightly. "Are you behind this somehow?" "Would it matter if I was?" he asked carefully. Layla considered this, twirling noodles around her fork. "It would depend on why. Perhaps I believe in supporting authentic passion," Julian offered, his gaze steady. "What would be wrong with that?" "Nothing except," she hesitated. "I don't know anything about you, Julian. You visit almost daily, you've commissioned this elaborate garden project, yet you've never mentioned what you actually do." For a moment, he seemed to be weighing something in his mind. Then he simply said, "I help connect resources with potential. That's all." Later that night, after Julian had left, Layla finally gave in to curiosity and searched his name online. The results were surprisingly limited. A few mentions of environmental philanthropy, a brief biography noting his engineering background, and a single photograph from years ago accepting an innovation award. Nothing indicating the wealth or influence that his behavior suggested. The mystery that was Julian. Hawthorne only deepened when Layla arrived at the community garden site the next day to find a full team of landscapers already preparing the ground, with equipment and materials that far exceeded the modest proposal they'd discussed. "We were told to follow your plans exactly," the project manager explained, showing her detailed renderings that matched her sketches, but with significantly upgraded materials. Mr. Hawthorne was very specific about that. As spring edged toward summer, 2 transformations progressed in tandem. The garden bloomed under Layla's guidance, and her shop steadily recovered with an influx of new business. Through it all, Julian remained a constant presence, never claiming credit, simply offering quiet support and genuine interest in her work. One evening, as they sat on a newly installed bench in the nearly completed garden watching the sunset paint the sky in brilliant orange and pink, Julian's hand accidentally brushed against hers. Neither pulled away. "Thank you," Layla said softly. "For what?" he asked, though something in his expression suggested he knew. "For seeing possibility when I couldn't anymore." Julian turned to face her, the fading light catching in his eyes. "Some people look at a withered plant and see only what's dying. Others see the next bloom waiting beneath the surface." His fingers gently interlaced with hers. "I've always preferred the second perspective. Seeds of trust." The community garden's opening celebration brought together residents from both the senior living facility and neighboring families on a perfect June afternoon. Children darted along the sensory pathway Layla had designed, laughing as they discovered the different textures and scents of herbs and flowers. Elderly residents guided their walkers to raised planters filled with vegetables and perennials, exclaiming over plants that reminded them of childhood gardens. Layla stood at the edge of the gathering, watching with quiet satisfaction as her vision flourished not just in plants, but in human connection. Mrs. Guzman, an 82-year-old who hadn't left her apartment in months according to the staff, was now enthusiastically showing a young boy how to gently touch a lamb's ear plant. "You've created something remarkable here," Julian's voice came from behind her. He handed her a glass of lemonade from the refreshment table. "We did," she corrected him, accepting the drink. "I couldn't have done this without you." Julian shook his head. "The vision was entirely yours. I simply provided resources. Resources you're suspiciously vague about," Layla noted with a small smile. Over the past 2 months, she'd grown accustomed to Julian's mysterious ways. How he could make obstacles disappear with a quiet phone call, how he seemed to know influential people in every industry, yet maintained an almost deliberate anonymity. Before Julian could respond, the neighborhood association president clinked a spoon against her glass, gathering everyone's attention for a speech. As she began effusively thanking the generous sponsorship of the Terra Renewal Foundation and its founder, Layla noticed Julian subtly step behind a large ornamental grass, obscuring himself from the front of the gathering. "The Foundation's representative, Mr. Hawthorne, has assured us this is just the beginning of a long-term investment in our community's green spaces," the president continued, scanning the crowd. "Is Mr. Hawthorne still here?" Julian remained hidden, giving a small headshake when Layla glanced questioningly at him. Later, as they walked back to her shop through the summer twilight, Layla finally asked the question that had been building for weeks. "Julian, why do you avoid recognition? Most people who fund projects like that want their name on a plaque or at least acknowledgement in the speech." He was quiet for several steps before answering. "I've found that when people know about wealth or position, it changes how they see you. They no longer respond to who you are, but what you represent." "And what do you represent?" She pressed gently. Julian sighed. "Officially, I'm the founder and principal director of Terra Renewal Foundation. We invest in sustainable agriculture, environmental restoration, and community green spaces." "That doesn't sound like something to hide," Layla observed. "It's not just the foundation." Julian hesitated. "My family created Hawthorne Agricultural Technologies. We developed irrigation systems and drought-resistant seed varieties that are now used worldwide." Layla stopped walking. "Hawthorne AgTech? The multi-billion-dollar company?" He nodded, watching her face carefully. "After my parents died, I took control of the company long enough to redirect its focus towards sustainability, then stepped back to create the foundation. My sister runs the corporate side now. So, at the gala, I was there evaluating potential investments. Vanessa had approached our foundation for backing." A wry smile crossed his face. "She didn't recognize me, which happens often. I prefer working without the family name overshadowing everything." They reached the shop, but neither made a move to say goodbye. Instead, Layla unlocked the door and gestured for him to follow her inside. In the quiet darkness, illuminated only by streetlights filtering through the windows, she felt brave enough to ask, "Why tell me now?" Julian leaned against the counter, his expression vulnerable in the half-light. "Because I find myself wanting you to know me. The real me." The confession hung between them, weighty with implication. Layla moved to the cooler and removed a bundle of fresh-cut wildflowers, bringing them to the workbench. "When I was 19, she began, methodically arranging the stems in her hands, "I was engaged to my high school sweetheart. Raj, we had everything planned. University together, a joint business afterward combining his business degree with my horticulture passion." Her hands moved deftly, weaving the flowers together. "2 weeks before our wedding, I found out he'd been seeing someone else, a banker's daughter with connections his parents preferred." Julian remained silent, understanding she needed to continue. Then came Vanessa. "We met at a flower market. She had the business acumen and connections I lacked. I had the creative vision she needed." Layla secured the wildflower arrangement with twine. "I thought I'd learned my lesson about trust, but apparently not. She waited until I'd built something valuable, then took everything I'd created. And now you're waiting for me to reveal some similar betrayal, Julian concluded softly. Aren't you doing something similar? Helping me rebuild, investing in my work? She looked up finally, her expression unguarded. What do you want from me, Julian? He crossed the room slowly, coming to stand beside her at the workbench. I want to be known by someone who sees me, not my family's legacy or my bank accounts. He touched a petal in her arrangement. From the moment I saw you at that gala, standing tall despite Vanessa's cruelty, passionate about your work even as it was being taken from you, I recognized something I've been searching for. What? Layla whispered. Authenticity. The courage to remain true to yourself, even when it costs you everything. His hand moved from the flowers to gently touch her cheek. I've spent my life hiding who I am to discover what's genuine. You never hide, even when it would be easier. The tension between them shifted, deepened. Julian's palm rested against her face, and Layla allowed herself to lean into his touch, just slightly. I'm not helping you because I want something in return, he continued. I'm helping because watching someone extraordinary rebuild after betrayal is worth supporting. Layla placed her hand over his. I want to believe that. Then do. His voice was barely audible. Trust is always a risk, but without risk, nothing valuable ever grows. The metaphor wasn't lost on Layla, whose life had always been guided by botanical wisdom. Seeds couldn't flourish without exposure to the elements that might also destroy them. She took a deep breath and stepped closer, closing the distance between them. I'm trying. Their first kiss was tentative, a gentle exploration of possibility. When they finally pulled apart, Julian rested his forehead against hers. There's something else you should know, he said hesitantly. The investment firm that just acquired Vanessa's company? It's a subsidiary of my foundation. Layla stiffened. What does that mean? It means her success was built on stolen designs. Your designs. His expression was serious. The new management team will be reviewing all their product lines and creative processes. They've been instructed to identify original creators and ensure proper attribution and compensation. You did this for me? Layla stepped back, conflicting emotions crossing her face. Without telling me? I did it because it was right, Julian corrected gently. Not just for you, but for everyone whose work she might have appropriated. The fact that it helps you is a fortunate alignment. Layla moved away, creating physical distance as she processed this revelation. Part of her wanted to be grateful, yet another part felt uncomfortable with his behind-the-scenes manipulation, regardless of how just the cause. I need time to think about this, she finally said. About all of it. Julian nodded, respecting her boundaries. I understand. As he turned to leave, Layla called after him. Julian? He paused at the door. Thank you for telling me the truth. About everything. Always, he promised quietly. From now on, always. After he left, Layla remained in the darkened shop, surrounded by flowers and contradictory emotions. The wildflower arrangement she'd created during their conversation sat on the workbench, untamed, authentic, and resilient. Much like the feelings taking root in her heart, it was both beautiful and frightening in its vulnerability. The frost of truth. The cool September breeze rustled through the newly installed hanging gardens at Petal and Stem's expanded location. Over the summer, Layla's business had flourished beyond expectation. Her unique arrangements now graced the lobbies of boutique hotels. Her sustainable garden designs had won a regional award, and just last week, she'd hired 3 full-time employees to manage the growing demand. But as she arranged white roses for a gallery opening, Layla felt the familiar knot of unease that had been growing since her conversation with Julian 3 weeks ago. They'd continued seeing each other, dinners, walks through botanical gardens, quiet evenings at her apartment. Yet something had shifted. A subtle reservation had crept into their interactions, a guardedness she couldn't quite overcome. These just arrived for you, Priya announced, carrying in a small package. Since the shop's revival, her sister had joined the business. Managing the financial side, Layla had always struggled with. The package contained advanced copies of Green Living magazine featuring Layla's garden designs on the cover with a 6-page spread inside. The accompanying note read simply, "Proud of you." "Jay, he's good for you," Priya observed, flipping through the glossy pages. "I haven't seen you this creatively energized in years," Layla sighed. "I know, but doesn't it bother you that half our new accounts are mysteriously connected to his foundation? That our spontaneous feature in this magazine was arranged through his connections?" "So what if they were?" Priya countered. "Your work deserves recognition." He just removed the obstacles. Before Layla could respond, the shop's door opened and Vanessa Harrison walked in, looking considerably less polished than at the gala. Her designer outfit had been replaced with a simple blazer and jeans, her confident stride now hesitant. "Layla," she said quietly, "do you have a moment?" Priya moved protectively closer, but Layla waved her away. "It's fine. We'll talk in the back office." Once alone, Vanessa wasted no time. "Did you know your boyfriend is systematically dismantling my company?" "He's not my boyfriend," Layla responded automatically, then processed the rest. "What are you talking about?" "Don't play innocent. Hawthorne Acquisitions bought controlling interest in Botanical Empire 3 weeks ago. Since then, they've been investigating every design, every supplier relationship." Vanessa's composure cracked slightly. "Yesterday, they removed 4 product lines, your product lines, and announced their restructuring creative attribution." Layla felt a strange mixture of vindication and discomfort. "And this concerns me how?" "The board is offering you full credit and a percentage of past profits," Vanessa said bitterly. "Meanwhile, I'm being sidelined in my own company. This has Julian Hawthorne written all over it." Julian mentioned reviewing attribution. "He never said—" "Of course he didn't," Vanessa interrupted. "Men like Julian don't explain their power moves. They just execute them and watch the consequences unfold." She leaned forward. "Did you know he bought this building too? Your miraculous lease extension came through Hawthorne Real Estate Holdings." The room seemed to tilt slightly. "You're lying. Check the property records." Vanessa's expression softened fractionally. "Look, I was wrong to take credit for your designs. But at least I was transparent about my ambition. Has Julian been transparent about his interest in you?" After Vanessa left, Layla spent hours researching online, confirming what she'd been told and discovering more connections. The anonymous grant that helped her avoid bankruptcy had come from a Hawthorne Foundation subsidiary. The wedding planner who discovered her shop sat on a board with Julian's sister. Even her reinstated supplier accounts had been guaranteed by Hawthorne Agricultural Technologies. By evening, when Julian arrived to take her to dinner, Layla had transformed her confusion into cold clarity. "You purchased this building," she stated without greeting him. Julian paused in the doorway. "Yes," and engineered Vanessa's company takeover. The acquisition was already in progress. "I merely influenced its direction." "You've orchestrated everything," Layla continued, her voice tight. "Every lucky break, every coincidence that saved my business, all puppeteered by you." Julian stepped forward. "Layla, I only opened doors without telling me they existed." She gripped the counter to steady herself. "Do you have any idea how this feels? To discover your entire recovery was manipulated? I wanted to help—" "No," she cut him off. "You wanted to control. Just like Vanessa, just like Raj, you decided what was best for me without giving me a choice." Pain flashed across Julian's face. "That's not fair." "I never took credit for your work. I never betrayed you. Didn't you?" Layla asked softly. "You betrayed my agency, my right to succeed or fail on my own terms." The silence between them stretched, filled with the scent of flowers and regret. "I think you should go," Layla finally said. "I need space to figure out what parts of my life are actually mine." Julian moved toward the door, then stopped. "For what it's worth, I never intended to control you. I just couldn't bear watching someone extraordinary struggle when I had the means to help." "The problem is," Layla replied, "you never asked if I wanted your help or how I wanted it given." After he left, Layla locked the shop and climbed the stairs to her apartment above. Standing on her small balcony overlooking the street, she watched Julian walk away, his shoulders bent against the autumn wind.